Okay, this is part 5, and I'm continuing from part 4, okay, which is uploaded right before this one, as well as the others in a row, if you want to go back and hear any further thing, but I'm just going to start reading. Okay, my mother married Aristotle on the island of Scorpios in 1968 when I was 8. I remember a few things about that wedding. Jackie and Aristotle drank out of special cups, like Russian wedding eggs, and Aristotle said, "I don't believe these are real gold. I think that jeweler ripped me off." Then he went off in search of someone to speak to the jeweler. In addition to being on the island, Aristotle took me to Saudi Arabia once. We sat in a circle smoking a hookah, and they told me I was their stepson because I was Aristotle's new son. I couldn't understand most of what they were saying half the time. It was in Greek or Arabic. But after that, they conducted a couple of ceremonies and assured me that if anything ever happened, I could return. They would protect me because I was one of them now. While I can't recall their names and wouldn't know whom to contact if I was in trouble, it was still very cool. Another thrilling thing we did was go on archaeological digs. Once we went with Aristotle, Wayne, my mother, and a group of other people to the site of the tomb of Alexander the Great's father, Philip II of Macedon, located in the mountains of northern Greece. There were amazing artifacts, but the people I was with looted the place. Among the items were tons of platinum and gold pieces and devices of ancient technology that could be compared to modern computers in terms of function. These artifacts were like circular discs with numerical inscriptions that stored information. Some artifacts use precious gems and metals to create holograms and moving pictures. You know who that sounds like? All those artifacts went to the family. What the public got to see was what they considered the rubbish remains. I believe Illuminati families gain access to advanced technology long before it reaches the public. Experiences like the one I had on this dig lead me to believe that a substantial portion of this technology has ancient origins, potentially linked to a prior, more advanced civilization. The know-how for constructing this technology needs to be conveyed discreetly for some reason. As a boy, I recall sitting on the floor of Bill Gates' garage as he was building his first computer. I held one of 2 small yellow walkie-talkies Wayne and I purchased at Sears. Whenever Bill got stuck, he would ask me to consult Wayne. I would relay Bill's question over the walkie-talkie and then convey Wayne's responses. The times I spent on Aristotle's Island are some of my best memories. I wish I could go back there and swim in the lagoon, but those days came to a tragic end. It was on one of my trips to Greece that my stepbrother, Alexander Onassis, was murdered. I was 13. Jackie, Aristotle, Alexander, and I were walking through the airport in Scorpios. Alexander said he was going to take his plane on a short trip, and I said, "I want to go. Can I come?" "Not today, kid," Alexander replied. But I was insistent. Please let me come." Finally, he relented and told me to meet him on the runway. When I got down there, however, the plane was already moving. I panicked, thinking he was leaving without me, and ran after the aircraft's tail, where I knew a hatch door was located for stocking the plane with food and liquor. I reached it in time and climbed in. I crawled into the cockpit and then froze at the scene before me. Alexander sat there, sweat rolling down his face, barely breathing. His eyes were wide with fear. To his side, a mechanic I recognized held a rusty revolver pressed to my brother's temple. Unable to move or speak, my mind raced, turning over plans to rescue Alexander. "Fly," commanded the mechanic. The plane lifted about 30 feet, and the movement unglued my tongue. Without thinking, I blurted out, "That thing won't fire." Both of them gasped. In an attempt to face me, Alexander began to turn, but before his gaze could meet mine, the mechanic pulled the trigger, sending a bullet straight into Alexander's temple. Alexander's head snapped to the side, then slumped forward. The plane nosedived toward the ground, and I screamed, clawing at the upholstery, tearing it apart with my fingernails. The aircraft collided with the runway, a thunderous crash echoing like an exploding furnace. My body bounced and twisted, a sharp, searing pain shooting through my arm. In the moment that followed the crash, all I could hear was my own ragged breathing. Propelled by frantic urgency, I crawled forward. The mechanic lay unconscious, and there Alexander, a sizable bullet hole in his head, lay lifeless. I pulled him onto my lap, tears streaming down my face as the distant wail of sirens drew near. The following chaotic scene was filled with shouts and tearing sounds as rescue personnel used tools to pry open the fuselage. It took them 15 minutes to cut through the wreckage. The whole time they kept trying to reassure me, saying, "Hang on, hold on, we're coming." All I could do was cry, watch them work, and gaze at Alexander through a blurry cataract of tears. The next thing I remember is waking up in the hospital. Aristotle barged into my room, gripped my arm, and hurled me against the wall. His voice boomed and crackled like a loudspeaker with frayed wires. Vehemently, he warned me, "You can never, ever tell anyone that your brother was shot. Not ever. People will think the family is weak, and we will not be safe." See, that's one reason people keep secrets like that. Temporarily. Okay, the next day he went to a judge and ordered him to sign the death warrant, declaring Alexander's death an accident. They hanged the mechanic, but they kept Alexander's dead body in a hospital room for a day so they could pretend he died from his injuries. Christina came and sat beside his bed, mourning his death. An autopsy followed, and I vividly recall the doctor mentioning they found the bullet, describing how it spun around in his brain. That haunting image of a bullet spinning in Alexander's head became a lasting picture in my mind. Over the next few days, mercenaries armed with machine guns ran all over the island. Aristotle was highly paranoid, and he carried binoculars everywhere, scanning the horizon for potential threats. Crouched at the bottom of a staircase, I huddled with my mother and her sister, Aunt Lee Radswill, who was visiting. Lee's voice was filled with terror. "I want to go home," she cried. I want to go home, she cried. "We're all going to die on this island." After Alexander died, I remember sitting with Christina at a picnic table. My arm was in a cast, and I was trying to get her to talk to me. She was crying and in shock and wouldn't move or speak. Then she turned on me and said, "How come you have no remorse for my brother? Did you kill my brother?" I was 13 and didn't know how to respond. I remembered Aristotle's warning. All I could manage to say was, "You have to talk to your father. Ask him, please." After that, we boarded the yacht and sailed for weeks. I had to stay in my cabin and couldn't put my head above deck in case anyone saw me. When we finally docked, my legs wobbled so badly from being at sea I could barely make it down the long path back to our home in Scorpios. When we got back to the island, I was confronted by 3 of Caroline's doubles. One of them said, "We're going to kill you. You're not the real John Kennedy Jr." Stunned, I stammered, "What?" I was so confused. I don't know what happened to my real sister, but I learned from Alexander's death that the families don't want to admit when one of their own is killed. They think it makes them look weak, but I think that's what happened to Caroline. That beautiful, vivacious sister that I knew in early childhood died a long, long time ago. I don't know when or how, but I would guess it was before my mother married Aristotle, because it was both Jackie and Caroline's doubles at their wedding. I'm not sure if Jackie not being at her wedding and Caroline being missing or dead are connected, but it was around that time that my mother started to lose her mind. On one visit to New York, the Secret Service orchestrated a photo op with John and me riding bikes in Central Park. A photographer snapped pictures of us separately and together, while the anxious Secret Service agents scurried around nervously. The looks on their faces said, "I can't believe we're doing this." All the while, my mother, Jackie, sat on the hood of a car reading a book, and I kept wondering why she wouldn't come and spend time with me. But by then, they had scrambled her brains pretty badly with LSD, bullying, and trauma. She didn't speak to me at all that day. Can you imagine me giving LSD against your will when you don't even know? I've taken a lot of LSD, and I can't imagine that. Just being given it. Okay, sorry. Anyway, another vivid memory is when I found her painting a giraffe against a blue background for Caroline's room. She was spaced out and I couldn't communicate with her. I kept saying, "Mom, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" She looked at me, eyes wide with surprise, and said, "Who are you?" My stomach dropped and I could only stare at her, speechless and afraid. Later, I came to know that feeling of not knowing who I was when trauma and torture left me so scatterbrained I didn't know my own name. On one such occasion, she gave me a compass saying, "It's so you'll never lose your way." Christina was also driven insane through bullying, trauma, and God knows what else. I have a picture of her with one of the Kennedys, and in it, he's gripping her arm while pointing a warning finger at her like he's telling her what to do. She appears visibly distraught and is crying. I remember that scene. I approached her and asked what happened. "Please tell me what happened." But she kept insisting she couldn't say. Finally, she broke down and said, "They made me kill my own father." However, I suspect it was a body double, as the real Aristotle met his end later. He was brutally murdered with a camping axe in the side yard of our Bullhead, Arizona home. Years later, a similar scenario unfolded in 1975 when they staged an elaborate scene to convince me that the murdered Martha Moxley was my sister. Under MK Ultra, they can make you believe you murdered Minnie Mouse. So, okay. Christina, a sweet soul but somewhat naive, married a Russian she believed loved her. Once at a lavish party on the yacht, I overheard her husband discussing her murder with friends. Frantically, I approached Christina. I said, "Christina, I have to talk to you. It's very important." She said, "Don't bother me, kid." I said, No, you really need to hear me." "Okay, I heard your husband talking about killing you. I love you. I don't want to see you dead. You have to know." She looked at me and I could tell she believed me. Then she stalked over to where her husband sat and confronted him in front of everyone. She said, "What's this I hear? You're trying to have me murdered?" Years later, I heard about Christina's death from an overdose and that her father had left her $70 million. That's when I realized she must have been murdered and replaced. Aristotle had billions. He would not have left Christina a mere 70 million. After Christina's death, the island of Scorpios went to the Russians. I never returned to Aristotle's island after Alexander's death. Instead, I was sent back to the Quigley family while Jackie and Aristotle established a stronghold in Bullhead City, Arizona. They bought up the town and put their people in all the houses in the area with the help of their trusted confidant, Don Laughlin, a casino owner in Las Vegas. Laughlin would later betray Jackie and Aristotle, however, to further line his pockets and expand his empire. From the age of 9, the Secret Service constantly switched out me and my body double. Except for some rare occasions at school, they ensured we were never seen in the same spot. When he was in New York, I was likely on the island and vice versa, creating a carefully crafted illusion. There were few times when we were together, however. Once when I was on a speedboat with the fake Caroline and John on a lake somewhere in the Northeast, Caroline turned to me and said, "Listen, we don't want to hang around with you anymore. They want us to murder you, and I don't want to." John remained silent, but I knew that when someone tells you you're going to die, they want you dead. The thing is, these doubles are put in when they're too young to know anything themselves. John did turn out to be an evil man, but Caroline's double had enough conscience to warn me. 16 minutes. Okay, so I'm on the chapter called Hollywood. I'm holding the phone. I hope it's clear enough. I'm speaking low, not to sound, like I'm telling secrets or anything, but just putting the phone in the right spot. So I'm not in the mood to interject too much about the other stuff, but I will say this before I continue and go on here, let's have a break. As history would have it, I just have to say this because, okay, while I'm reading these books, right, in this time period, I don't know who all of you are going to know who I'm talking about, so I'm just going to say it. Jaguar Wright just got an invite to go to Mar-a-Lago. Invite by who, pray tell? Oh, look, it's going to run out of space, it's telling me. Okay, I'm going to end the video, and then I'll just keep reading later, but an invite. It's telling me to clean up space. I just did. Oh, it's probably because I'm talking about it. Liz Crokin, right? So I'm watching Sean Atwood, and I'm seeing everybody's happy about Jaguar going to Mar-a-Lago to do what? To actually meet Mr. Trump. And what for, pray tell? I heard something mentioned about Liz Crokin. She disappeared for a while, right? From the first old days, and then she came back. And I heard something said about, oh yeah, we're going to talk about that bill or whatever it is to address the child trafficking problem. Anyway, I'm not making fun too much, but it was interesting when Jaguar's they're all celebrating, right, that she gets to go be up on that platform, and then she's going, oh yeah, the Secret Service is everywhere. I feel safe now. They were serious. And I mean, I don't, what a setup. Okay, anyway, I think I'm going to stop this chapter, but that's just historically interesting that Jaguar and Liz Crokin are what, going to go to Mar-a-Lago, and so I don't know, but after reading this book, I have a lot of more new questions and everything. So okay, that's 20 minutes. That's kind of short, but I want to get through it. So I'm going to stop here, and then on the next part I'll read from the chapter called Hollywood. Okay, bye.